1 out of 8 people, a billion people in the world, might die or get sick today because they don't have reliable water. I won't stop getting water to the poorest billion people.
Paul Brown.
Father, dedicated educator, and forward-thinking visionary, Paul Brown is on a noble quest to alleviate the suffering of those enduring thirst across the African continent.
This isn't the peak of the mountain. This is a plateau. My faith does not require anyone else's agreement. To do help that hurts, I want to be sensitive to that and treat people as they are people. Take care of everybody, just like you would for yourself. Because if we're all looking to serve each other, like it'd be heaven on earth. Then I'll turn my attention to the next need. Goals really drive us. On the other side of most goals is exhaustion and depression. Everyone's responsible to come to their own conclusions. My way is a way. There's plenty of money, there's plenty of water. How can I or you or we do something once and it takes care of generations to come? We should keep walking in faith, then I'm going to keep walking in faith.
So, Paul, I've heard a lot of things about you, and there's a lot that we definitely have to talk about. But, first, just who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Same here. Great place. Yeah, so I'm a real estate investor, creative real estate investor turned philanthropist. And my life purpose is all about getting water to people that need it.
Water
and
to
in
people
fact,
that need
that
it.
came before the real estate investing, and they've both worked together and driven each other.
So when you say you get water to people that need it, exactly what do you mean by that?
Okay, so 1 out of 8 people, a billion people in the world might die or get sick today because they don't have reliable water. And so for years, I would work with give to organizations that help people in those circumstances get water. But in the past few years, I started going to African nations and also India to train people on how to dig their own water as well. So I've been trained on a very inexpensive proprietary method of how to teach people how to dig water wells. Takes a day to teach it, another day or two to install it. And what's really important about that is when we show up, a lot of times the people will say, "Oh, it's great. You're here. You're going to dig us a water well." And we say, "No, you're going to dig you a water well. We're going to do it with you." So that way you're going to be trained and empowered and equipped. So when we leave, you can maintain it. And maybe more importantly, build more, and then it can multiply.
So, and enlighten me a little. My ignorance is about to go very far because I'm a city guy.
Yeah.
So when you say dig a water well, you just go on the dirt and you just dig a water well?
Yeah, we look for a place that's called an alluvial plain, which is basically kind of near a river. And what a lot of folks don't know, I found out recently, is there's way more water under the river than is in the river. And that's true for miles on either side of a river. So where I live in the Memphis, Tennessee area, that's near the Mississippi. Well, I'm 20 miles from the Mississippi, but there's tons of water, only 50, 60 feet under my house.
Wow.
And that continues to be the case for hundreds of miles out because we're so near that river. And that's absolutely the case in most parts of Africa where this water is most needed. And on that note, there's so much, there's an abundance of water in the world. So I don't believe in scarcity really for anything. There's plenty of money. There's plenty of water. It's not a matter of resources. It's a matter of organization and oppression. And those are really the only two reasons why people don't have water. Because there's so much money and there's so much water available. It's just a matter of helping the folks that need it to get it.
Got it. And so what happened in life for you to just switch to walking from water? You said you did real estate.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's how that happened. And managing a passive or a mostly passive real estate portfolio and helping people get water, it all comes out of the same desire. Or maybe we'll say the same two desires. And one of them is freeing up the time and helping people, in one of the cases, me, do better. That's what real estate's done. It has helped my clients as well. And the other one, which is very close to that, is the answer to the question of how can I do something once and it take care of me for life? Or maybe an even more powerful question that I'm realizing as we're talking is how can I or you or we do something once and it takes care of generations to come? And that's the whole goal of this Walk for Water. It's not about, oh, I'm going to walk across an African continent and, beat my chest and talk about how tough I am. Like that's not really the point. The point is to be there with the people, these folks who themselves have to walk miles each day just to get to water, and to stop every few days and meet up with some water well drilling partner teams and organizations of mine to every few days stop at a village and train the people there on how to dig a water well. We put in 2 or 3. I walk on to the next village and do the same there. And so it's not only raising the awareness and the funding for water that people need, we're also training teams and installing water wells along the route.
I realize what you just said. You just walk across the continent.
I said it was like I'm going to go to do something casual.
So how far are you walking?
It's about a 5,000 mile trek. And the people that I'm walking amongst and that are out here, watching and supporting me, you may have some voter influence on where I go. Because right now the plan is to walk from either South Africa or Lesotho. Lesotho is a country that's landlocked by South Africa, up to Egypt. So that's about a 5,000 mile trek.
Wow.
However, if as I get to Egypt, the supporters are like, "Oh, you need to turn left and go across Saharan Africa," then I'm open. I'm flexible. I'm going to go where the need is.
So you can do more than 5,000 miles. Okay. So have you ever done anything like this before?
Yeah. So what I've done like this before is carry heavy equipment in the heat in Iraq when I was deployed there for 15 months.
Okay.
As an Army soldier, and a bunch of other tough stuff that the Army makes you do. And I've also been, on the other hand, in Malawi, Uganda, and India, training the people there and helping them install water wells. So I've done both parts of this arduous exercise. And I also it's a war of attrition. So my friend Peter put me onto this movie about the lady that swam from Cuba to the United States, and it's like a nonstop swim. So she swam for I think 2.5 days.
It's real? It's a real movie?
Yeah, it's a real movie, and she actually did it. It took her like 5 or 6 times. If you haven't seen it and I just spoiled it for you, my apologies. Oh well, still worth seeing. But what she did is way harder physically than what I'm setting out to do, because she didn't sleep and she couldn't touch a boat, and she was getting attacked by jellyfish, and it was crazy. So what I plan to do is walk, walk, 8 to 15 hours a day, 4 to 6 days a week.
Wow.
And always have a rest day, take care of my body, take care of my mind. And of course, some of those days, if we stop in a village for 2 or 3 days to train on water wells and get the water wells installed, then I won't be walking those days. But I'm committed to it for 18 months plus. Wow. And I could only make such a commitment. Well, even the shorter trips that I've done, like I was in Uganda for 10 days last year. I was in Uganda for a month the year before that. But I could not have really done that if God wouldn't have helped me build a business, a real estate portfolio that would free up my time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And maybe ironically, I would not have taken those risks and taken that action to build such a portfolio if I didn't have this major why kicking my butt into action. Because once at my first real estate investors conference, the guy was speaking and I just got the tap. And the tap was I just felt like a guy poked me in the chest. It's like, you're going to take care of this water problem in this generation. And I was like, I don't know if you know about my empty pockets and the fact that I'm stuck in this job. And I ain't got nobody or anything to do that with, but yes, sir. Because if he calls, he'll equip.
Mm.
And no matter what you believe in, if you accept something and take responsibility for it and take the action, there's so much power in that. And that's what I found. But then I went about the business of real estate, not as I want to make money or I want to free up my time, but hey, a billion of my best buds might die or get sick today if I don't do what I'm here to do.
Mm. Got it. Wow. That's a lot. And so, you know, how do you, there's so many ways to take this. How you got me tongue twisting over here, bro. Walking 5,000 miles is a lot of miles. How do you mentally prep for something like that?
I think I accept the successes that I've previously done. The fact that there's other people that have done this. I don't claim to be like, just like, I don't have a I'm special syndrome where like I have to make this about ego, if that makes sense. There's two guys recently, one that's doing it right now as far as walking across the continent, and another guy that did it in 2018. So I'm looking to honor them and learn from what they've done and maybe improve upon what they've done with their advice and permission, and include them and leverage that experience and my experience to help people that have to take these risks every day, not for a project, but for their life. And then there's another thing that I remind myself, and it's an experience I had in the Army in training. And because the story I'm about to tell you demonstrates principles that I've seen in business and relationships like every month. And it's the principle that a lot of times the hardest thing is at the beginning. And if you'll just start, like, the rest will manifest. So I was in an officer training course right after I became an officer in the Army. And this particular day, I was in charge of the mission that I was on with my fellow students. So we're peers, but this particular day, I'm assigned to be in charge.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't remember if I'm assigned to be in charge or if we're just thrown out there and I took some charge. But basically what I told them is we had options and we were walking through the woods. We had to get to a certain point. And there was a way to get there that was really easy, but it was indirect and it was going to take a long time. Or we could just go straight there, but there was this big thicket and briars and bush in the way. And so I said to him, I said, I'm really good at getting through thicket like this. And I can also tell that it's only going to be at the beginning. So if you'll just trust me and follow me, I'll push through the hardest part of this. And in probably 30 feet or so, like, we'll just be in the woods. We won't be walking through briars. And I didn't know that experientially, meaning I hadn't been there before and you couldn't see, but I just sensed it. And I'd had that experience before. And so I guess I was convincing because they trusted me and they followed me. And I think maybe it was too, because I was like, I went first. But
I would have too. I mean, I don't even know what thicket and briars are.
So a bunch of brush and like thorns and small trash trees. And so It's hard to walk. But that's exactly what happened. We pushed through and 20 feet in, like, it cleared up and it was easy and we got there like super quick.
Got it.
And, yes, but that happens all the time. Like, if a thing, a relationship, a business decision, or even starting a business, a lot of times it's like, oh, I don't want to risk it all. But it's like, it may only be this initial risk.
Push through. Okay. No, that's dope. You know, that I can see how that level of training definitely might have helped a little bit for this. You know, I was in the Marine Corps, but
okay.
Yeah.
Hoorah, is that what you say?
Yeah, rah. Okay. Yeah. Right. But you know, I was a tank crewman, so slightly we didn't have to walk that much. Okay. But knees are
we're
done.
Infantry.
Yeah.
So we're walking everywhere.
Everywhere. I did go to Bahrain and I went to Kuwait. And so
what was Bahrain like?
Bahrain was actually cool. Bahrain was good. They were having like like a civil war. And
Okay.
so, they were setting their own cop cars on fire and
Wow.
everything. And, that was pretty interesting in itself. But the actual state of the place itself was amazing.
When was that?
And that was 2013 or 2014. Yeah.
Okay.
And basically, like, you got to see the difference in how much money there is
Okay.
in these different places, because their small mall in Manama had a water park in it, and that was
Wow.
the small mall.
Wow.
And so I'm like, huh? That doesn't make sense. But as just America is the same way, right where, and you see these a lot with these countries that you go to, like Mexico and everything. It'll be certain spots that are nice and have money and riches and stuff, but right outside of that is just straight poverty, and you see people hurt. And so while I was out there, we did Sec 4, and we were protecting one of the bases, and pretty much like people, we went over there with a certain notion, and I'll give it that for sure, because we definitely went over there with prejudice.
Yeah, I hear you.
And once we started to see the actual people that lived there, they're just like us, like the kids were getting Jordans and all of that stuff. And I'm like, man, this is just, it's like every day with a different culture.
Yeah.
And they on the days off, we work 6 days a week, 1 day off, and we only got to go into the city a couple times, but that was the light deployment. And we went to the mosque, and that's where it really like hit me, like, man, they're just like us. And I started learning more about the culture, and just head to the ground, and we come from the earth, and we give everything back to it, and all of that stuff. And that humanized them for me, because before, we were trained to go over there and just drop bodies and do this and that. And that experience versus going to Kuwait, complete different experience, because you're dealing with, in Kuwait is where we deal with extremists.
Yeah.
And extremists are definitely different from everyday people.
Right.
And that's something that people in the United States, or people everywhere, should know. There's people, the same way that we have, white people, black people, Asian people, people are going to be people.
Right.
And we need to understand that they're not all the same just because it's a race or ethnicity or anything like that. So, yeah, it was a opening experience.
That's what I saw over there, both in Iraq and just in the Army in general. Had a commander that was giving us some training once. And actually there was 2 times, and both of these have really stuck with me, because it's true, just whoever I'm relating to. But he was like, now we're infantry, and this is in 2008 or whatever. And there's a lot, I mean, it's crass in the military. But he was like, guys, it's easy to, call these Iraqis Haji or whatever other kind of slur you might come up with, and like stereotype and think negatively about them. But these guys are just like us. They work and they go home and they hope their wife isn't going to yell at them. Like, it's the same thing. And there was another time while we were in Iraq that somebody told us, they were like, you see trash everywhere. Like, don't judge them. When you think you might get shot at or blown up, or you're not sure where your next meal is coming from, you're not concerned about how trashy your yard is.
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me. Not the literal thing about the trash, but just like
circumstance.
In America, like even for the most part, American poor like are like, they have a lot more resources than probably most of the people in the world. And so like, don't judge. And I'm talking to myself, don't judge someone's culture or life or whatnot when you don't know what they go through and have. And I mean, judging someone in general is kind of a waste of time and energy. But I loved my experience in Iraq, and I got to see two different platoons and how they treated the Iraqis.
Mm.
And one platoon would go out and like the kids would run up to them and try to sell them drinks or bread. And I heard of like this soldier like taking the Coke and just like throwing it in anger away just to, be mean to the kid. And thankfully I was with a platoon that believed if you treat people right, they'll treat us right. And so like we would buy their drinks and bread and I mean, we like the drinks and the bread, and they win too. They get some money to live on, but we didn't sustain any injuries from the people we were out there working amongst, and that nasty platoon did. So there was some karma there, and it doesn't always work out that cleanly, but that's what I saw.
Wow.
Thank you for your service. Is the VA taking care of you?
Yeah, the VA is, and even that is a double-edged sword in itself, because when I got out, like not too long after, I went into the psych ward for a while. I couldn't assimilate back properly, and it wasn't the same. Like I went in initially weighing like 120 pounds, and then I left weighing 185 solid.
Wow.
And then now, or recently, I was like 240 the other day. And that's when I was like, man, I gotta lose some weight. I gotta drop back down. But I had like a back injury from the Kuwait deployment, and I couldn't work out the same anymore once I got out. And so I was somebody that loved sports. I love, being active physically outside, doing this and that. And I just couldn't. Yeah. And I wasn't paying attention to it right when I got out. Like I knew my body hurt. But I was like, all right, whatever. I'm out now. I have to focus on surviving, making money. Because before I went in, I was homeless. And so coming back out, I was like, I'm going back to the same thing.
You're not doing that.
Yeah. So I had to just figure life out. But as I started to figure life out, of course, we did it, business stuff. We got all this and everything. That's when I really started to realize, like, man, I put on like 45 extra pounds, 50 extra pounds. Yeah. And then it wasn't until they told me, they were like, yeah, you're pre-diabetic. And I was like, what? And I was like, how am I pre-diabetic? And they were like, well, you're not moving the way you used to. Your body's not used to it. So it's not breaking down your sugar or fats or anything like that. And so,
is that like a gut punch for you?
Yeah. And so literally that was like 2 months ago. And since then I've lost like 17 pounds, 18 pounds. So I've just been eating cleaner, not all the time, but like 85% of the time, cleaner, and just being more active. It still hurts to work out, but, I started tapping back in with the VA even more. And, got the physical therapy stuff going on and everything like that. But, it's an experience where it's humbling, because it's like, we have access to VA type things, and we don't take as much advantage of it as we can, because we don't want to go through the process, or we don't want to, deal with the paperwork, or we don't want to like wait in the lines or show up. Oh, I got to drive here every week. It becomes an inconvenience because our life is convenienced.
Right.
But no, definitely, thank you for your service.
Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. And what you're doing now is what we call the service after service, and how you're affecting the community, how you're helping the community and other communities, and bringing awareness to stuff like that. And so, something that I want to ask is, when you're doing these things, what drives you to, what is a goal that you have in mind, or when would you stop?
I won't stop. I intuit that I'll be stopped at some point. That's how it'll end. Mm-hmm. My goal is 1 million wells, and more specifically, getting water to the poorest billion people. And my goal is that gets done, not that Paul Brown is the one that does it. So if because of my life, we for my work to contribute to that goal, like, I'm happy. Doesn't matter who does it. It's not about ego. It's not about me. And I've broken down in a very specific way how through delegation and multiplication and empowerment, 1 million wells can, 1 million wells can be installed over the next 12 years. What I also know about a goal is the other side of a goal. On the other side of most goals is exhaustion and depression. And that's something that surprises a lot of people. I first encountered this when I completed a bodybuilder competition in 2018, that's not my thing. Like, it was a one and done type thing. But I got really sad afterwards. And I figured out why through some coaching, talking with others. But goals really drive us. And we spend so much energy getting to them that once we accomplish that goal, that's great. But if we don't have a replacement goal, if we don't have a goal to get to the next place, and also before we start cracking in on that, have some intentional rest period, whether that be a day or 6 weeks or somewhere in between, depending on what you just spent accomplishing that goal, you're going to be exhausted and you're going to get sad. So goals to me are not like Leland, the guy that works for me, one of my best friends. He's an operations manager. He manages my portfolio. He just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And
wow.
And that was a mountaintop experience for him in that he got to the peak, like the highest peak. But our goals are not like that. Our goals are you see what you think is the peak of the mountain. And you put all this effort into getting there. But then when you get there, you accomplish your goal and you realize, oh, this isn't the peak of the mountain. This is a plateau. So that's great that I got to what I thought was the peak of the mountain. This is a plateau. So I'm going to take some rest. I'm going to make this my next base camp. I'm going to sleep, tonight or the next night. And then I'm going to take that peak. Then you do that. And a few days later, you're also, oh, this is not the peak either. This is a plateau. This is a mountain of plateaus. And that's how life is. You just goal after goal. I never want to get to a place where I've accomplished all my goals. And even on a weekly basis, like for the most part, if my weeks or days are like, oh, I got all my tasks done today. My task list is empty. Well, that's a problem. Like, it's better to be like, to get rid of the guilt of, oh, I still have 2 more tasks to do. No, that's fine. I'm going to sleep. We'll get cracking on that tomorrow. But I don't want my task list or my goals to ever get done. I'd rather be done.
Wow.
Than run out of work to do.
Got it. And so you tap back into your real estate portfolio and you said operations manager. Just how big is your real estate portfolio?
It's not big. That's the beautiful thing. Right now it's 6 properties. I sold some last year in response to, and by some I mean like 2 or 3, in response to being defrauded of like 7 figures that I didn't have.
What?
I'll tell you that in just a second. But it's not big. It's effective. So I have a small but effective real estate portfolio and 1 full-time employee that's really at this point more like a partner that takes direction from me. And that's 1, because that's more advantageous for both of our lives and both of our time freedom and culture. And 2, even when I was an ops manager working for the man, like, it never made sense to me to have an attitude of like, oh, I'm the boss. Hey, workers, go do such and such. It's like, no, you guys are the ones getting the work done. I'm only here to provide direction, facilitation, some guidance, and remove the barriers so you can get the work done. Like, you're more important than I am. So, I work for you is really what it is. And that was the attitude I brought to work as an operations manager. And that's still the attitude I bring towards Leland and my clients. Now there's responsibility there. So like, if there's something that I know needs to go a certain way, like he knows that, I know that. I don't have a problem being responsible for those kinds of decisions. Yet it works best for me to train him to where like I'm here and he's making decisions. And I'm like, good call.
Got it.
Yep. So there's another thing that I want to key on that you asked me, just to be more specific and clear. So my favorite speaker said, the poor you always have with you. So I don't have delusions that I'm going to eradicate poverty. However, like when somebody doesn't have water, that's abject poverty.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can just get people systems of water, then they can spend their time working and growing food now with this increased amount of water they have, instead of spending 8 hours a day walking to get water just for survival.
Hmm.
But when I accomplished my goal of helping get 1 million wells in and seeing the billion people that need water have water and systems of reliable water, then I'll turn my attention to the next need. Well, do they have enough food? Do they have bikes to increase their capacity to get to work? Are they getting microloans so they can start businesses and free up their time instead of just working for the man? So it all comes back down to how can I, how can you, how can they do something once? Or how can we help them do it? How can they do it? How can I do it? Whatever. How can we do something once that takes care of me for life, that takes care of you for life, that takes care of them for life, and then more importantly, that takes care of generations for life?
Hmm.
And I don't believe in passive income. I like to call it semi-passive income, because even something like real estate that is typically called passive, like I still have to manage a manager.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helpful to grow the portfolio. Well, that takes time. So what I'm saying is, it's not totally passive. I don't believe in total passivity this side of heaven. I don't think that's how the laws of nature work, and I'm okay with that. But it's a whole lot easier to spend 5 hours a week managing the managers and spinning the keeping the plate spinning every now and then than it is to spend 50 hours a week working for the man and starting from scratch, getting your plates all up and spinning.
Got it. So we're going to go back to that defraud. 7 figures.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
I'm still trying to figure it out, Rich.
Yeah, I'm just,
Right, so
that sounds crazy.
It was and is. And it's like something out of a movie or
Yeah.
true crime TV or whatnot. And basically there was a guy who's one of the funniest people I know. His name's Chris. And he joined a mastermind that I'd been involved in since 2016 with my longest running mentor. Chris joined in 2019, just dominant, funny, charming, serving, and winsome, and successful in real estate and business. And over the course of 2 or 3 years in our mastermind, like he won all of our hearts, and I'd been in his homes. I met his wife and kids. And in the beginning of 2022, he started raising funds for some partners he partnered up with. And now I didn't know this at the time, but I'm telling you what I know now. Basically, for the first 9 or 10 months that he was raising those funds, because he was the main one raising the funds for his 4 partners. Well, what he didn't know is one of his partners was a twice convicted felony Ponzi schemer.
Wow.
Who was released early, and was giving Chris a fake name.
Wow.
And so,
how long ago was this?
This was in 2022.
Oh, wow.
And
Only 2 years ago.
Yeah. So it's recent. So, and the fallout's still here, but Chris invested his own monies in it, a lot of his times, and then all of his friends and families, he got to invest into this thing. And various business deals that we're getting like these crazy returns. And, I'm way more firm on this now, but I had already been told and for the most part believed, like, don't go doing a bunch of crazy stuff like the stock market or other unsecured investments where if they go under, there's no accountability or recourse. I just lost my money.
Yeah.
Like the great thing about real estate is, yeah, you could lose your money, but like you still have like some dirt and some land, something that you can do something with it.
Yeah.
To show for. And one of the reasons I did it is because I started small. I knew him, and he signed a personal guarantee that was backed by his $1,000,000 real estate portfolio. So I reasoned it's not directly secured by real estate, but it's indirectly secured by real estate because I'm lending him $20K, and he's got, $4 million in equity in a $10 million portfolio or whatever. So I thought it was good. The challenge is all 200 investors probably thought something similar. And as it kept going better and better, we kept investing more and more. So I borrowed over the course of that year, I borrowed mainly in business funding over $400K that I sent to him. And I had put a lot of pressure on myself to double my assets and double my monthly cash flow every year. And I'd done that the few years prior. And so I just believed that the way to do that would manifest. Well, we were getting 6 points a month, which is equivalent to like 72% interest. If you know the rule of 72, then 72% interest or 6 points a month, compounded monthly, that's 100%. You're doubling your money every year. So, you know the rule of 72. So like you can figure out how often an investment is going to double by dividing the interest rate or the rate of return into 72. So we're getting 6 points a month. So 6 times 12 is 72. So 72 into 72, that's 1. That means the money doubles every year. Like a lot of real estate investors, they will lend money to other real estate investors at say 12%. That goes into 72, 6 times? So every 6 years, their money will double. Well, I had pressured myself to, again, get my assets and my cash flow to double in 2022. And I thought I had done it because of the kind of returns I was getting with this investment. But they were paper returns and they were kind of Ponziing. But it was done so well and so slick, whereas for the first 9 months, he didn't even know that that's part of why we were bamboozled.
Damn.
So, but my mistake in it was going against what I already knew, which is don't invest something that you're not willing to lose or that's going to waste your time or money in something that you don't control. And so like at this point, I've gotten super clear on like, there's only 3 asset classes I'll invest in. And they are 1, the kingdom of God. And by that, I mean like helping people get water. So there's that reward, I'll never lose it. 2, yourself. So that could be like a seminar, a book, like even starting a business that you own or control, that you're good at or could be good at. And then 3 would be income producing real estate, that you either own, control, or will control if things go awry. So I'm more clear on that. That's the lesson learned there. And I own my piece of it. But last summer, the DOJ and SEC charged him and his 4 partners with I think fraud against the government. So basically they stepped into our position as like people that got defrauded and prosecuted and forced. And he pled guilty. I'm not sure what his partners are doing. But before he pled guilty, I got a hold of him and I told him I forgive you. And that was super empowering because, I forgot this piece of it. I told you I borrowed over $400K to invest with him. Well, in September, which was a month after he found out that he himself was being deceived and this was a big Ponzi scheme. Well, in September of 22, I co-signed for this $1 million loan that came into my account and then I sent to their account. And I was supposed to get a little over $19,000 a month for signing that personal guarantee and being the facilitator. And I did the first month, but then it went away. And then a few months later, the $10K a month that was due to the lender, interest only, they stopped paying it. So then that fell on me. And then it became, well, you're one of the guarantors, Paul. So you're also liable for this. So it's not just the 400K. It's basically $1.5 million that I'm responsible for. Now, depending on what your viewpoint is, I'll say thankfully, you may disagree, but thankfully those were borrowed monies and not like my own cash. And every now and then I'll laugh at how people talk about like business people or entrepreneurs. Cause like if you haven't done it, like you don't understand. And even like people, how they'll denigrate people and how they deal with money. Like if you're not there, like you just don't know. So we just shouldn't judge each other.
No, 100%.
But in my opinion, no investor or real estate mogul or entrepreneur or business owner would just leave $1.5 million sitting in their checking account
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons. Like a lot of us are cash, like we seem broke because we deploy it all into our business and we're really going for it. So I'm going to say, thankfully, that was the case and those were borrowed monies, but I'm still like responsible for that $1.5 million. So in last year, May, the credit score was 836. And I saw that go to a 536 over the course of a few months. And there were some benefits to that. And one of them is
benefits to a 536 credit score.
Yep. And here's what it is. It proved what I always said I believed about credit and identity. And so my identity is I'm a child of God who strives to treat people right. Doesn't mean I always have, but that's the goal. Strive to treat people right. That's my identity. And so having God as a father, like that's way more important than, I'm a real estate investor or I'm a philanthropist or I've got an 836 credit score. So credit is a tool. So if you got a broke credit score or if you got a great credit score, like just keep in mind, like that's not who you are. This is a toolbox. Like a carpenter would never say I'm a hammer. That's silly. Or I'm a saw. No, those are tools you use to provide your livelihood. That's great. You're way better at that saw and hammer than I am, but like you're not a hammer. So when I had the 836, I told myself and I told other people, I like my 836. I did things to cause this 836 to happen. I was blessed with a lot of things that were kind of just given to me. Some things were given to me, some things were earned, but you get it. Yep. It's a mixed bag. But I'm not my 836. And I'm not the fact that I freed up my time in real estate and I've been successful, And so now that I have a negative net worth and I was telling Peter the other day, basically like a negative 7-figure net worth.
Wow.
And a 536, like that doesn't change how I carry myself because it's not who I am. And by the way, that 836 and multi-million-dollar net worth was not who I was either. I'm a child of God.
With you, everything that you just said, it reminds me of like, I don't know why people say it because, I don't really agree with it. But basically they say when you help people too much, you're trying to account for something in yourself that's missing. How do you feel about that?
I think that's true. I think there's a lot of truth to that statement. That's definitely something that I've struggled with. In fact, like most of my life, I feel like I've struggled with what I'll call hyper responsibility. And I'm not claiming that I've always been responsible about everything. I'm telling you, like, if I go into a restaurant now, I've done a lot of work here and I've gotten therapy and I've done mindset shifting and action shifting. So what I'm about to describe to you is not as powerful as it used to be. And really when it was most powerful, I wasn't even aware of it. But it used to be that like if I was in a restaurant and somebody dropped a dish, like I felt guilty. Wow. I don't mean I felt bad for the person. I mean like I felt guilty, like it was somehow my fault and I should go clean it up.
Wow.
And even like on the way here, I was waiting for a ride and I saw like a few cigarette butts on the ground and I picked them up. But I told myself, I'm not required to do this. Now I want to, and I'm here, so I'll do it. But like, don't make this like a guilt thing. Like, oh, I have to clean up some stranger's yard of litter that I didn't cause. But no, that challenge is there, but it can also be a strength when managed properly. Because if we're all looking to serve each other, like it'd be heaven on earth. I think one of the big things that's helped me has been the saying, like, don't pour from an empty cup. And that all those people that I want to serve and help, like, I'm one of them. Like, I'm a person. So, like, yes, it's great to help other people, help myself too. So again, my favorite speaker, Jesus, he says, like, basically he sums up religion and he sums up the scriptures by these two simple sayings. He said, love God with everything you have. Now I'm quoting him loosely, but basically he says, love God with everything you have and love your neighbor as yourself. He didn't say love your neighbor and hate yourself.
Mm.
He didn't say love yourself and don't worry about your neighbor. He said love your neighbor as yourself. So the implication there is, one, love yourself. Like you're worthy of love too.
Mm.
And two, like take care of everybody just like you would for yourself. Now I had one pastor challenge me one time. He was like, oh, so that means that I should grab the homeless guy off the street and like put him in my house and like, he should live in my house with me because I get to live in my house. No, that's not what that means.
Mm.
Because like, one, that's probably not what you would want if you were that guy. You might just want a warm greeting or a prayer, a handshake, and like $2 or a Snickers or a warm drink or something, or a hand up or whatnot. So I don't think it means that we have to destroy our lives to help others. It just means treat everybody well, including ourselves.
No, absolutely. And so, what do you feel when you get angry?
I struggle with sounds. I'm sensitive to sounds. And there's times where I get irrationally upset by noises or certain types of noises, like especially people's mouth noises. And that can be comorbid with or a symptom of PTSD, which I have a experience with and a diagnosis of. And the feeling I get when I experience that, which that's usually where most of my anger, like where I experience it, is like, it's like a flare up and a little bit of like physical tension. And then I'm like, Paul, it's not a good reason to be upset or angry. So I have to like step back and take that second to be like, I don't like this. So it's okay for me to remove myself from this irritant. But also like that person that's chewing with their mouth open or slurping their tea, like they're just enjoying their food. Like, calm down, Paul. There's other times that are probably more serious and maybe more worthy of getting angry. Like if somebody's wronging me but for me, it's way more likely for me to get angry, me seeing somebody wrong someone else, just for whatever reason.
Got it. And so how would you feel, or has it even happened where you've helped somebody, you're like the same people that you're trying to help with these wells and everything, and they throw it back in your face?
Perhaps. What do you mean by throw it back in your face?
So like, everybody's scenario would be different. I don't have an exact example, but like, they weren't privy to it. You thought you were doing a good thing, and it's something that they could use help with, and it doesn't have to be just the wells. I just use that as an example, but well, I'm gonna go down it. We met this homeless guy, and we went downtown, me and Dan here, for sushi, and I went in there. It was super packed, and I was like, I'm not dealing with this. He couldn't park anywhere, so he went to go do a circle around the block.
Yeah.
A homeless guy. I watched everybody just pass by him, and he's like, man, and he just starts talking out loud, and I'm standing there, and he's like, man, everybody think I want money from him. Like, I'm just trying to ask for a job. Yeah. And so I said, okay, and we have a conversation. We talked maybe about 3-4 minutes. Dan comes back around the corner, around the block. I said, hey, I don't really have a job to give you per se. I said, I have a production company. Do you know how to use cameras and stuff? And he's like, oh, I rap. And I was like, well, we don't really do that, but I mean, I get it, whatever. He was like, all right, cool. Can you just give me a ride to the bus stop? And he's like, I am a little hungry. And so I said, all right, cool. We could do that. So I bring a random guy into Dan's car. Dan's probably looking like, what is happening right now? And, he's like, can you throw on an instrumental, man? And he starts
Here we go.
rapping.
Yeah.
Yeah, he starts rapping and it's good,
Okay.
and he has a lot of emotion in his rap. You can tell he's been through a lot of different things. And, we actually became friends.
Wow.
And we became friends from the stature that we treated him like if we just told one of our other boys, yo, man, hop in the car, like we pulled up to McDonald's, I think, for him to get him some food and, dropped him off at the bus stop. And we were like, all right, bro, we'll see you, whatever. And yeah, he had my number written down on a piece of paper. I said, hey, man, when you get a chance, just hit me up, whenever you want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
And he continually started hitting me up. And every time he would hit me up for the first month or so, it was like he didn't ask for money when he hit me up. He was just like, hey, man, just checking in with you. Like, I'm here, I'm outside, just surviving, just doing this and that, whatever, blah, blah. And that was it. And we would have that conversation. And so after really getting attached to, him, I guess, I bought him a phone.
Mm.
And so I bought him a phone and we turned it on for him, and we hadn't heard back from him in a while. And so I was like, oh man, like, I hope he's okay. And then he finally calls me back like a week later and he's like, yeah, man, I was in the psych ward because I was on top of the bridge. I was going to jump.
Mm.
He was like, I didn't want to deal with it anymore and everything. And, somebody came out their car and stopped me. And I was like, all right, I'll keep going. And so he was like, can you come pick me up? And so I said, yeah, man, I'll come get you. And so I went to go get him. He was like, yeah. He was like, unfortunately, like, that's the best sleep and food I've had in like a week.
Yeah.
He's like, I've been going through certain stuff. And so I was like, hey, man, I got a phone for you. And just the sheer excitement, he was like, man, I don't want to cry. Like, I don't want to deal with that and anything like that. But got him a phone and just his personality of, you could see pieces of who he was where, everybody has dark and light. And everyone having dark and light, like he went to jail. He went to jail for doing illegal shit. And so, he dealt with that, but he was at a stage in his life where he understood that. And, it was either he goes to jail and sacrifice his friends to get out early, or don't sacrifice his friends and just do the whole time. And that's what he chose. And he said, man, I chose that. I chose loyalty. And now my friends don't even want anything to do with me. And I'm back. He said, I did like almost 20 years. And so he was like, man, I grew up this way. My mom, I watched her kill my dad. I watched her go through a lot of these things. And he was like, I never grew up properly. And I had nobody around me to teach me how to grow up properly. And so this is the only life that I know. I came out and, I couldn't get back into regular society. And now I'm a felon. Nobody definitely wants to hire me for sure and do all of this and that. And so I just kept bringing him around. Me and my girl, we took him to Henderson Clinic and got his paperwork, met with the psychiatrist and started setting up some things for him to get into housing and get into all of this and stuff. And that's when stuff started to like change a little bit, because he would almost call me now.
Contempt or what?
Yeah, he would call me now to like expect help.
Mm.
And, that's when I would have to tell him real quick, like, hey, I'm not going to want it more than you do.
Yeah.
And
that's key right there.
Yeah. And so I went to New York for a family event or whatever. And Dan was supposed to, was not supposed to, was going to drop him off to the same appointment to meet up with the second psychologist. And I was like, hey, he lost the phone at this point because he left it. And wherever he was charging it, he went to the bathroom for like 30 seconds. And, he was so used to not having a phone. He's in a house around other, junkies and stuff. And he said, man, I ran back to it and it was gone. Yeah. And I knew, because I called him and I hadn't heard from him in like 3 days. And I called the phone and a girl picked up. And she's like, no, I don't know anybody by that. She's like, but I'll sell you the phone back for $15. And I almost went to go get it, but it felt sketchy.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
good call.
I'm like, man, why? I don't hear anything in your background. I know she's homeless, because she's trying to sell me a phone for $15, but it doesn't sound like outside. She's in a contained environment. I hear music in the background, so that means she's not by herself. She says she doesn't know whose phone this is, but she has the phone. She says she found it in the alley somewhere. And from knowing him, he doesn't sleep in alleys. He gets paranoid at that. And so he's like, yeah, I only sleep by the boat, or I don't sleep at all. Or I sleep in the mall during the day, because he's super paranoid. And so when she said that, I'm like, something's not adding up.
Yeah.
But I hadn't heard from him, so I didn't know. And, so I chose to leave the situation alone. And, he called 3 days later and was like, man, I was embarrassed. I didn't even want to hit you up because I didn't want you to think like I sold it for drugs or anything like that. He was like, it was just, I didn't know how to confront you about that, And so we go through that motion, and I'm like, man, I'm just glad to hear from you. I'm glad that you're good. All the materialistic stuff we can get back at the end of the day.
Right.
But then after he missed the appointment, after I had went to New York, that's where stuff started just downrailing, because he was like, oh, no, I didn't, make it. I couldn't get to a phone, this and that. I said, you had a few days before, you could have organized that with Dan, and we could have picked a spot to pick you up at. All of that. I said, we've done it before. Yeah. And you have to actually want this. And I said, before I can help you with anything else, because I'd get him food here and there and do all this other stuff. And I was like, reschedule the appointment. And that was maybe like a month ago now, and he's never rescheduled the appointment yet. But just the other weekend, because I had took him, this is a black man in the community, and to me, that's one of the communities that I want to help the biggest is the black community. And so I took him to other black business owners. I took him to the like a clothing store. We got him like 3 or 4 outfits that the person just, supplied to him so he could feel good, look good again. Took him to the barbershop, got a haircut. Like, he couldn't even recognize himself. He was like, yo, this is what I look like, man. Like, this is crazy, and just all of those other stuff. But the same person who gave him the clothing store owns a brunch. And so the brunch is right around where we met him, kind of. And so last weekend, Sunday, I wasn't there, but Don calls me and he's like, hey, when's the last time you talked to Raw? And he's like, I'm like, I don't know. It's been like a week and a half, he didn't really like that I said he gotta, do it for himself if he wants me to continue to help him. And so I was like, he didn't want to deal with the truth for me. And so he was like, okay. He was like, well, he came in front of my establishment and caused a scene. He came with some other guy that we both had never met. And he was like, yeah, he was screaming at the top of his lungs, for me to come out. And like, I had him waiting out there and whatnot. And he was like, bro, I don't have anything for you. Like, what do you mean? I have you waiting out here. I don't. He was like, has he talked to me? And he was like, yeah, I talked to Rich, but so what? And he was like, oh, whatever. And then he's like, I got a business to run, and goes back in. And then, maybe like he said, like 2 hours later, the staff comes back to him again, and he's still out there causing a scene. And they're like, is everything okay? You want us to call the cops? And he's like, what is going on? And then the party ends, and he goes back out.
I'm sure that was frustrating for both of you.
Yeah. And it goes, and he goes back out there, and it's just the random guy. And he's like, oh, Raw's looking for you. He's like, he's not looking for me. I don't have anything for him. He's like, what you looking for me for? So you looking for me? And and when he told me that, like, I just felt so bad at the same time. And I know, because, this is called attractive mindset. I study psychology, and it's hard to not let situations dictate or change how you want to contribute certain things. And in him doing that, I'm like, man, we have never tried to do anything besides put you in a position to win.
Right. And
you went in front of this person's establishment and caused a scene.
Oh, you talked to him about it?
I haven't talked to him, and I don't know what I'll say when I do talk to him. But at the same time, I feel like he also knows that, which is why I haven't talked to him, because this was last week. Yeah. And so it's just a mix of things. And that was the long way to really just reiterate the question that I was asking you, which was, in you doing a lot of these things where you help people, or you help people that seem like they need help, whether
Right.
they want help or not. Do you ever get kickback in a way where somebody doesn't agree with you and you can't process it like,
Right.
man, I'm trying to
Well,
uplift things?
I'm really glad you asked me that, and also thanks for sharing that experience as well. Because there's two really important things I want to point out. And before I do that, I'll just say that I've had some experiences like that. There's some theories from psychology that state that, like, when we're nice to people, like, it can cause them to treat us with contempt, which is really sad, but that is what happens sometimes. And I don't think that's a reason to not be loving to people, but just to be aware that that's there within the human psyche. And I think that a major lesson there that you already know, and it sounds like you are already doing your part to implement, but you can only control yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that is that you can't want it for him more than he wants it for himself. And he's got to take part in his recovery or in his advancement. And that's true when I'm looking to help someone at any level, whether it's abject poverty or, hey, let me help you because you say you want my help learning to be a real estate investor, or on how to find funding. Well, like, the only help that I feel like really works is the help that requires them to take part in and do the work in. So the work I've done so far has been all about that. Like I was telling you, oh, you're going to dig a well for us. No, you're going to dig a well, and we're going to do it with you, and we're going to equip and empower and educate you, and then we're going to leave, and we'll be out, and now there's no white savior problem, and it's not about us or our ego or us trying to put our methods on you, and you can change the methodology, whatever you want to do. It's your well, it's your country. And that is the attitude that, so not only is respect communicated in that, but also responsibility. And both are huge. And really, to not empower someone to take responsibility is a huge insult.
I'm sorry, I just thought of something. You ever seen Scary Movie?
The actual movie, Scary Movie?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think I know what you're talking about, though. It was a spoof, right?
Yeah. There's a guy in Scary Movie that you kind of look like. And it came to me mid-sentence. I didn't want to be laughing in your face.
No, it's
and
all
you
good.
didn't know what I was laughing at.
So you gotta bring up the guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Like when you curate this episode.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna dial out.
I'm gonna pop the die up on the screen. Listen.
And then the comments are gonna be, it's true, bro. He looks just like that guy.
Yeah.
All right. So if I wanted to really insult you right now, like, one of the biggest ways I could insult you would be to lower my expectations of you. Does that make sense? Like, to me, that's more of an insult than like calling you some name. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you're a man, you're a person, you're very capable. Like, I know this, even with just now meeting you. And so, like, to do help that hurts. So I'll give you an example. One time, there's a story of, like, these people that went somewhere and they wanted to help the poor people. So they donated, like, bags of rice. And so like truckloads of rice came in, and the people loved it. They grabbed the rice, free rice. This is great. It saved them money on their grocery bill. Well, they felt good, and it looked like they were helping the people. Here's what happened, though. The people didn't need food for a while, so it drove the grocer out of business. So 3 or 4 months later, when they ran out of the rice and they needed food, there was no grocery. They had to go to another town.
Damn.
So that was help that hurts. And Western culture, colonizers, that attitude, the negative aspects of white culture is great at, like, help that hurts. And I'm just calling it how I see it, both historically and just interactions that I've had. So one of my foremost intentions in this walk and with previous water work that I've done and work that I'll do in the future is, how do we do this in a way that leaves the responsibility with the people whose responsibility it is? It's like, it's your responsibility to live your life, not mine. So how do I respect that and honor your responsibility and honor you by treating you respectfully, and also equip, educate, and empower you to get past this barrier that really shouldn't be there? So that's my goal in the water. And then okay, well, so it's a giant American white guy walking across the African continent. Like, those kinds of things have happened before, right? So I don't want to go over there with like a colonizer's attitude or a modern day colonizer's attitude, or even a virtue signaling, like selfie, social media guy, like exploiting the poor by, taking pictures with the kids that are struggling with poverty. I want to be sensitive to that and treat people as they are people. So on that note, if there's a village or a territory or even a country that doesn't want me passing through, like I can go around. Like there's plenty of folks that want help and that need help that I can go to for me to harass somebody going somewhere where I'm not wanted. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
And I take that attitude with people because there is people before that I've helped, and I knew, well, if I could spend some time with them or tell them this or that, it would help them. Yeah, but they didn't ask for my help. And sometimes they've explicitly, communicated that they don't want my presence, and that's okay. There's 8 billion people in the world. You know what I mean? So I want to make sure I'm doing help that actually helps, and that is about empowering the people, not how can Paul build himself up in his ego.
Got it. No.
Or how can I go impose my religious beliefs or my culture on someone else? Because you'll hear me talk, like I've quoted Jesus several times in this interview. Here's the other thing too. Like, people will hear that and be like, "Oh, he's trying to proselytize us," or he's going to go there to try to force people to become Christians. No, my faith does not require anyone else's agreement. And also, one of the key elements of my faith is that everyone's responsible to come to their own conclusions and do their own due diligence and research and have their own opinions. And I honor that. And I think we're all stronger when we can accept that and respect that, and live lives where, like you're saying earlier, we're all just people, and a rich tapestry of cultures and varying beliefs and practices, instead of assuming, oh, my way is the way. No, my way is just my way is a way.
And so who helps the helper? How do you find people that like help you provide the equipment, or is it all out of your own pocket?
Yeah, some of what I've done so far has been out of my own pocket. I've traveled overseas several times with an organization called 1 Million Wells.
Okay.
And so they've raised funds. I'm now raising funds. The walk itself will be costly, both money and, time and energy. And then, of course, our water well drilling partners that I'll meet up with village to village, they'll need funds too. So the campaign I'm on right now, as I make appearances, is to ask people, hey, if you can sponsor a step, $5 a mile, $100, $97 actually. If you can sponsor the day before I get to a well installation, and the well installation as well, that's like $2,500 donation. It gets a plaque. So now we're talking, it's a legacy play for the donor, and it's life giving for hundreds of people in that village for years to come. Probably about 100, 120 years. Actually, that's how long our wells last. But more importantly, the practice doesn't go away. If you keep practicing installing wells, they can keep doing it. So meaning, I'm not just there to install wells. I'm here to train people so they can multiply that.
And so after 120 years, what happens if you say that's how? Is it the well
Yeah,
that you
so
need to remake, or is it the water?
those shallow wells, the casing, what we drill with, and the casing that we leave in there is PVC. Um, and when it's buried, it'll last that long. This modern day new PVC. Now, if you leave it out in the sun, it won't. But if it's buried and we did it right, it'll last a long time. But again, the key point isn't, oh, we're going to put in a well that lasts 120 years. We're going to build relationships and take actions that forge communities and train communities so they can put in as many wells as they want, which in itself they can use as employment.
Got it.
So they're not only providing water, but if they can go do it for profit, we bless them. We give them our method, go for it.
Has there ever been a village in I guess a dry spot?
I've seen a time where we drilled in a place that we kind of knew better, but we're honoring the local wishes, and there wasn't enough water there. And there's been another place where we were hitting too much rock, and we were already short for time. Now, both of those times were in Uganda, and the local Ugandan well drilling teams took the methods we taught them, and they married it up with what they already knew as experienced well drillers, and they improved the methods that we taught them. In fact, and got really good at drilling through rock. And so what happened is 3 months later, I found myself in India, meaning 3 months after Uganda. And I was sent to India to establish a second water well drilling team. This was in summer of 22. And our team in India is a local guy named Babudi, and his team was getting in 2 wells a week, clockwork. So that's 100 wells a year. And you're talking about a well impacting, 20 to 500 people. Like, that's some good progress. And totally, we would send funds. And in that economy, with his experience, his team could get it done for about $400 to $700 a well, because we weren't there and we had already trained and equipped and all that. But that task of taking Babudi to a totally different region of India and starting a second team in a different region with new people, one of the challenges was immediately we hit rock, which we weren't used to in India. And the part where we're drilling in India, they were used to drilling through 50 to 70 feet of decently soft sand and clay, and now we're in the water sands. You got a well. Takes a day or two. We started in this place, and bro, it's like, instead of advancing like of 2 or 3 feet an hour like they're used to, or sometimes even faster than that, like we were going at 4 inches a day. And I remember writing on my report, advanced 4 inches today. It's a lot of rock. Like, I was so frustrated. I was like, we're gonna get this though. So I texted and emailed the Ugandan team, and I was like, you got anything for us? Like, we're in rock. These guys aren't used to rock. I'm not used to rock. None of us have the experience to do this. Like, what do y'all do when you hit rock? So Stephen, who's a Ugandan, and Jamie, who's American, but she moved to Uganda, they both, like, he got her the drill and the drawings, and they got me this rock breaking drill design. And emailed it to me from India. I mean, from Uganda to India. And I had the welder, I showed it to Babudi, the welder crafted it for us. We punched through the rock. Wow. We ended up getting a better well. We didn't have to go down as far because rock is an aquitard. Aquitard means it stops water. So is clay when it's really thick. So if you're drilling through rock, it may take more, may be more challenging, but there may be some goodies a lot closer, and which is exactly what happened. The beauty of that was, how did we get through that rock? Well, Team Uganda advised Team India on what they had to struggle through. And if me or RC or any other guys had gone over to Uganda, like, no, you have to do it our way. You can't make any modifications. Like, this is about 1 million wells, proprietary methods. We have patents on these. RC's a genius. He's a scientist. Like, if we had made it about ego, they would not have had the freedom to improve. Nor would I have had the relationship to be like, we can't get through this. What are y'all doing? And if I had that pride of like, oh, I'm not going to ask you Ugandans. I train them. You know what I mean? No, we all can help each other. We all can learn from each other. That was one of my favorite experiences. Another experience is kind of like it in reverse. And a few months before that, before I'd ever been to India, when I was in Uganda for the first time, we were sitting in Uganda, and we're drilling a well. And while we were drilling this well with the people there, RC pulled up a video of, I think, the 200th well that was currently going in India, and we weren't there. And so I have a picture where I've got RC's phone playing the video of the 200th well going in India, while the well in Uganda that we're there helping the people install is also going in. So, but what I loved about that story is we're not there in India, and they're moving it forward.
No, that's definitely dope. And so, that makes me think of a question as well. Have you ever had to, with dealing with you being in the military in the past as well, have you ever gone into one of these other countries and had to deal with like wartime?
I haven't, but I have a sense that will change. That will change soon. We dealt with some folks that had, some regular Ugandan citizens, civilians that had dealt with some pretty bad PTSD because their country and certain regions had been war torn recently. And just to the north of that, South Sudan, I don't think that a lot of folks are even allowed in because of the wars that are going on there. But on that note, like I've heard from some insiders that the second to the last country on this trek is Sudan, and it's also, I don't know if it's war torn necessarily or more just on the more danger side. But I'm going to start walking, and Dr. Martin Luther King said that faith is taking the first step without being able to see the whole staircase. So I'm going to start walking and work in respect and peace with the locals and the country officials and whoever I encounter, and pray that as I get to each region, that it's what it needs to be when we get there. And just as importantly, that I'm who I need to be for that place when I get there. And I don't have an arbitrary commitment to just stubbornly doing a thing. So it could be, if we get to a certain place, like if we get to the Sudanese border and determine that we should keep walking in faith, then I'm going to keep walking in faith. Maybe the situation and the feeling and the prayers determine that we should stop in faith. Like it could be either, right? Both could be a faith move. So we're going to see, but I've got my work cut out, and I'm not going overly concerned about my safety, nor am I throwing caution to the wind. Like I'm still going to mitigate risk. But like there's plenty of things about this goal and this plan that are unsafe. And that's kind of the point. The people are over there today, and they might die or get sick, and they themselves have to walk unsafe distances, and that in itself is unsafe to go get water. And I'm not more important than they are. So I don't believe in taking unnecessary risks or doing things that are unsafe without any benefit. But like if it's a potential sacrifice and it could put me in a little more harm's way, but there's a big benefit, which I believe there is here, in the amount of help that I can direct and drive towards these lovely people that need it, then it's worth it. And God will take care of me. and I've got a peace about that. And I also just feel like a karma and a harmony when I'm at peace with people and myself and God, and I just go out there and love. Like, I feel like that's intuited by most people I encounter just in my posture. It's not a brag. It's just something I've experienced. And so I think that will continue to be my experience. And, if it's not, we'll see, but I'm not going to borrow trouble from tomorrow, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Got it. And so the last thing that I wanted to really touch on was,
there's no playing with hippos.
There's
So
no.
Found out recently that hippos are one of the most deadly animals.
Recently? Yeah, nah.
Yeah, they're vicious.
I watch a lot of NG, and they ain't it. I learned from the game Hungry Hippo when I got my thumb bit. So from that alone, I wasn't messing with them animals. But then I actually watched some National Geographic, and they take you out. But one of the last things I wanted to touch on was I want to do a gem drop. And so gem drop is where we really give insightful information to how somebody gets to a certain level, and if they're watching this long in the video, they deserve it. A lot of in gem drops, what people give might be in their coaching or courses or books or whatever. And I want to, just give some steps and some realistic things that they could do from today to the next 6 months to a year. If people wanted to create time the same way that you did for yourself, by getting into real estate and everything and creating a portfolio that allows you to do these things, how would they go about that?
Yeah, there's 3 things that I can think of that help me get there. One is creating a reverse budget. Second is, it's not as boring as it sounds. I'll tell you in just a second. Second is
well, first, what's a reverse budget?
All right, so most budgets are boring, and they're based on, I make this much income, I assume that's all I can make. It's a hidden assumption. It's a cultural assumption. It's there purposely, keeps people down. And then I have these expenses. So subtract the expenses from the income, that's my budget. Boring, unmotivating, uninspiring. So I was given this idea to do a reverse budget. And I was a machine operator before I joined the Army, just scraping by, going into debt, actually had a college degree, but I was making like $30K or less per year. And one day I sat down and I wrote, okay, let's start with expenses and things that are wanted, that the family needs and wants. And let's just go crazy with it. Let's just write everything that we want and need, including like retirement plans. And so like one reflected like $32,000 worth of expenses. And the one that was more like future driven was $72K. And 72K was more than twice what I was making. But like there was still an impact of, wait, so I could accomplish everything I want to accomplish in this figure that I could probably get to. Like I didn't come up with like, $1 million a year. Like it was 72K. And so by starting with the desires and the expenses, what happens, and this is why it's reverse, is now your subconscious is challenged to, how do I create the income to provide for these things that I want and need? And assuming there's no limit. And realize I'm not talking about, the key is to go out and be materialistic. But life still takes money, right? And certain things will drive your motivation. So I'm real big on being a producer, and as much as possible, how can I be a producer instead of a consumer? But we're here. We're on the earth. We still have to consume things. Yeah. I get it. So in this reverse budget, it assumes rightly that my income producing potential is limitless. And it is. Like you can create as much, like there's not a limit to how much money you can create. You can create as much money as you want. You can create as much assets and wealth as you want. The only limits are limits we put on ourselves. And I would also say there's probably temporary limits that are circumstantial. But like those can be overcome with planning and action. So make a reverse budget. You sit down, list everything that you want and need to get the life you want, as specific as possible, detailed as possible, broken out as possible. And then say, okay, this figure is 114K a year, 11K a month. How do I produce 11K a month? And your subconscious will go to work figuring out, how do I create assets and businesses that will create 11K per month? And it just will. It's almost like magic. And I don't mean it'll happen that moment. I'm saying over time you take this exercise seriously. And then, so for me, that path was mainly realized in creative real estate investing, which to me is kind of the cheat code, because you could be a bumbling idiot. The creative real estate investing is such a powerful vehicle that you could be a bumbling idiot and still succeed. And the reason I know that's the case is because sometimes I'm a bumbling idiot and I'll still succeed with it. So I mentioned to you earlier that I currently have a negative net worth. Mm-hmm. And I'm a millionaire, but I'm a negative millionaire. So if you looked at a personal financial statement, like, our culture trains us that, the financial culture especially trains us that, like, oh, what's your net worth? That's the most important metric on the personal financial statement. What's your net worth? Well, no, it's not. It's probably one of the least important metrics on the personal financial statement. If you think that's financial advice, and I'm just financial advice, think whatever you want to. But I think it's one of the least important and most overrated metrics on personal financial statement. Now, what is the most important metric on a personal financial statement? I think it's a tie between monthly cash flow and streams of income. Now, you may not see that metric on a lot of PFSs, but on my PFS, it's called a growth PFS. And I put in a metric for how many streams of income I have. So for me to look at it and be like, oh, there's 41 or there's 86, like, that makes a lot of worry go away. Like if I lose a client, because, oh, I was at 86, now I'm at 85. You know what I mean? Okay, yeah. Well, I won't notice. Not bragging, but like we'll get somebody in that room in 2 weeks. It'll be fine. Whereas if my stream of income was one, a JLB, and I get laid off, like I just lost 100% of my income. But at any rate, so monthly cash flow. So yeah, on personal financial statement, I've got a negative net worth right now. But the point I'm making is, even though I made that mistake and got criminally screwed to the tune of 1.5 million, and that's tanked my credit or whatever. Like, credit is only one tool. Financial net worth is only one metric. My monthly cash flow is still strong enough for me to weather this storm and be selective about how I deal with the creditors and rebuild from there. So I'm not advising that you go out and get a negative net worth. That's not the point. And I'm not advising that you make mistakes in investing. I'm saying, even if you do, like I'm sitting here telling you, I made a 7-figure mistake, and like I'm still able to move forward. So for me, that was the path, but it doesn't make sense just like it didn't make sense for white folks to like go around being like, oh, our culture, our way is the way of doing things. These other folks with darker skin, they're ethnic and they have a culture, but our way of doing things is normal. That's my opinion of what's happened in history for the past 500 years.
Good opinion.
So, but what would have happened if those white folks would have been like, oh, we have European culture and these guys have African culture and these folks have Chinese culture. How do we trade some deals so that our food's not so bland? That would have been a better exchange than, it's like they're blind that they have preferences. Just acknowledge the preference, cultural preference, nothing wrong with that. You like what you like. And then you're in a position to respect other people's cultural preferences. So in the same way that I want like cultures, particularly mine, to be aware of our own culture and then also respect other people's cultures and work together in a tapestry. I also don't go around being like, oh, real estate worked for me, so you got to be in real estate. Well, it might not. But if you want your own life, there's something that you can do that will seize at some point your own time and free up your time, because you now have a business, or you now have a commercial real estate portfolio, or you have this social media presence, whatever. But the point I'm making is, within each of us are the seeds of a business or some kind of empire if we want that. If you want to just be an employee, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want your freedom, you can get it. So that's the second thing. And then the third one, and it's kind of like the second one, but it just goes. Let me change that. I'll finish the second one by just saying that thing I told you at the beginning, I like to apply it to everything. How do I do something once and it take care of me for life?
Mm-hmm.
It's even like, I think there's parts of me that like, I don't feel like I'm OCD, but there's parts of me that I'm like, Paul, there's some there's issues in here, because like I will literally, like my pill bottles or like my things that I use, I will constantly leave the caps off of them because I'm like, I'm going to use it tomorrow. Why do I want to spend the 8 seconds right now putting that cap on, only to spend 7 seconds tomorrow taking it back off? So just leave them off.
You do it with like juice and stuff too?
Not liquids in a fridge or whatever. I want that closed.
Yeah.
But like, if there's any kind of repetitive process that I can eliminate, like I'll get rid of it. And sometimes it gets ridiculous because it's down to like things that only take seconds and that people wouldn't even think about strategizing
Like what?
on. Like what I just told you, as far as like the leaving caps off of things, or like just leaving something a certain way because that's how I'm going to use it next time or whatnot. So, but more importantly, for bigger tasks and things that build assets or income, like what can you invest in yourself or in something where you're working on it this year, but you're not going to have to work full time on it after that. That's what you pour your emotion and your thought and your money into. And then thirdly, and this one will help the second one I just mentioned, and maybe to a degree the first one, and that is the realization that every single person, self included, is capable of raising entirely more credit than you realize. And even though I'm telling you this, it's still true of me, because there's credit products out there that I could get that even I don't know about. And I've done a deep dive. And I don't mean research, like I've gotten the stuff. The reason I was able to get screwed out of $1.5 million in credit is because I found all these different places to borrow money from. And like I leverage hard. And one of the reasons I leverage hard, and you should consider too, is it's an asymmetric risk. Just like your own business is an asymmetric risk. And in the Army and the Marines is probably like this too. They would only let us fight with asymmetric risk. In the Army, it was 10-1. We could not engage with the enemy unless we had a 10-1 advantage. So like, that means like if I wanted to fight you three right now, and this is Army, y'all would have to be like, find some kind of way to de-escalate it, because there's not 10 of you. Now I will tell you, y'all could definitely take me, but asymmetric risk, that principle has really built my real estate business. But here's the deal. So here's why borrowing as much money as you can is an asymmetric risk. Well, Moneybag Rich, right?
Yep.
Okay, I love that name.
Moneybag
Rich. What are the consequences of playing, and by playing, I'm talking about like playing full out in business with $30K of borrowed monies and it going pretty much worst case scenario, like you lose all $30K. Now you legitimately deployed it in business, but it's just total, like you lost all $30K. Worst case scenario, what happens?
Well, for me, that $30K went to the strip club. So,
okay. So for some guy or lady that's just starting out, the worst case scenario could be that they have to file bankruptcy, which means that people talk bad about her ability to handle money and credit for the next 2 months to 10 years, somewhere in there. All right. Now, what are the consequences, worst case scenario, of playing full out with $30 million and screwing up royally?
Same thing.
Yeah. People talk bad about your ability to handle money and credit for the next 2 months to 10 years. Well, it's the same thing if you're dumb. If you're smart, you've made some friends along the way and have a softer landing than the $30,000 bankruptcy. But all things being equal, same thing. What is the difference in what you could do with 30 million versus 30K?
A lot.
It's an astronomical difference.
Yeah.
So the benefits are way different from borrowing a lot, but the risk or the punishment if you mess up are the same. So the more you borrow, the more you make this risk asymmetric. Now, I'm not saying just get as much credit as you can, like you said, like to go to a strip club or whatever. Like I'm talking about when you have something that is actionable and profitable, and you either know that you can profit with it or you reasonably know. Because in actuality, the actual effect for most folks is if you screw up with a 30K, you got to go back to work for the man. And if you screw up with a 30 million, you might have to go back to work for the man. Probably not, but you might have to. But a lot of people are already in a position where you're already working for the man. So if what you would lose, if the punishment is what you're already in anyway, why not go for it?
Very true. So
yeah, you can borrow all kinds of business credit, all different types, and the amounts are limitless.
Wow. That was a listen. He gave you the full walkthrough of the three. He didn't just say, "Oh, it's this." You know, he gave you the explanation of it, and you know, you're very good at articulating things and breaking them down for
Thank you, Rich.
Every type of audience to understand that. And man, this has been a great, episode, podcast, and just learning your story, who you are, Paul Brown,
I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
I'm a fan now as well too.
Same.
I'll be rooting you on, 5,000 miles and all of that. And, if people wanted to tap in with you, learn more about your journey and learn more about how they can support and everything, where could they do that at?
Yeah, thank you. Follow me on Instagram at Paul Brown Speaks, and Freedom Walk to Water Door. All right, yeah, we just set it up. So, yeah, and also you can check out freedomwalktowater.org. Come there, check us out, see what they're doing. Give, be a part. Freedomwalktowater.org, and also support, sponsor, come through. Like you want to come and do a walk and talk podcast while we're walking through Zambia, Africa, wherever we are, come on.
Wow. Nah, that's amazing. Hey, make sure you guys tap in. If y'all want to go walk and talk, Paul's the guy you got to talk to. But listen, this is another great episode. It's your host, Moneybag Rich, also known as Mastermind Rich. And as we always say, we look good, we live good. Life is good. Talk to us, we talk back, and we out of here.